Winnipeg traffic. One thing to know.
All right, I'm starting to learn. That's why I'm here. Yeah, scoping it out.
So again, very happy to have you here in Winnipeg, and congratulations on being the new composer in residence.
Thank you. Pretty exciting.
It is. It's very exciting,
Yeah.
and I guess you're coming at quite a busy time for the symphony itself, with the New Music Festival happening.
Absolutely. Seems like a nice coincidence that I'm here right now, huh?
Yeah, I'm sure a nice coincidence. So how did this all come about? When were you approached about becoming the new composer in residence with the WSO?
Well, there was the job opening that I found out about through some friends. Actually, I'm a composer in residence of the Victoria Symphony. My good friend Jared Miller, fantastic composer, brought my attention to it. I sent them my music, and it all worked out. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And I understand you weren't. They interviewed you. You were saying
they interviewed. Yeah, I was in Spokane. I was working with the Spokane Symphony with Eckhart Proy while doing the Skype interview.
Wow,
it was pretty exciting times.
So when you've been composing for how long now? How many years have you been composing music for?
Depends on what we mean by composing. I've been in the classical composition world now for about 10 years, going on 10 years. But I was a metal songwriter and composer for several years before that. I come from the metal world.
Heavy metal.
Progressive metal.
Progressive metal.
Yes.
So how does that jibe with classical music?
Really well. If you like the Rite of Spring, you might like quite a bit of progressive metal, actually.
And Stephen O'Malley, who is in town for the New Music Festival.
Looking forward to that, actually, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when did you get into composing then? Like, I mean, was it something you studied at school? Was it something you've always wanted to do? Or were you more of a musician to begin with?
Well, I started playing piano from the age of 4. One of my earliest memories is from sitting at my grandfather's feet while he practiced the clarinet. He was a professional Greek music clarinetist. So music was always part of my life. As a teenager, I gave up the piano for the guitar because it just seemed cooler.
Grew out the hair. And
I grew out the hair, very much so, and the goatees and all that. It was the 90s.
Oh, yes.
And so I entered the metal world and started, figuring it out on my own and with my friends and bands. And it got serious, and we started touring and recording and doing that kind of thing. And eventually, on a personal level, I felt like I had hit a creative wall. I was always kind of trying to figure out how to do it on my own, learning my own method of composition and my own music theory and all that in my very stubborn, creative artist kind of way. And at some point in my early to mid-20s, I thought, hey, maybe now's the time to go back to school and learn the foundations, learn really how that stuff that I really admire actually worked. And things have been moving pretty fast since then.
So where did you go back to school? When
I went, first Vanier College. I'm from Montreal, so there's the CEGEP education system. Yeah. So I went to Vanier College first, and then to McGill for composition, where I studied with Chris Paul Harmon, Jean Lesage, and John Rea. And then to New York, City University of New York Graduate Center for my doctorate, which I'm now dissertating. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you were doing the heavy metal music, were you also listening to classical music at the same time? Did you have time, and were you inspired by some say, modern composers?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, some might disagree about calling it modern, but Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony is something that I'd heard early on while still in the throes of my metal addiction. And the drama and epicness and majesty of that kind of music really appealed to me. And the Rite of Spring, which I mentioned earlier, really one of the most formative pieces of music in my musical history. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in your current life as a composer, do you draw upon your influences from heavy metal or for other things as well?
Absolutely. It's in my blood. It's not even drawing on the influences. That's just how I think. And it seems to transfer pretty well, especially in orchestra. It's such a big machine. Great way to get those big, heavy, lush textures. So
if you were to describe your style, how would you describe it? Would it be dreamy yet rhythmic? Is that what the New York Times says?
I'd say epic post-romantic. I don't know.
Post-romantic. Is there a particular instrument you like writing for more than others, or do you like just for the whole orchestra?
I love the more instruments I could get, the better. It's, again, the bigness of my music and my way of thinking about music transfers well into more instruments, more harmony, more timbre, more register, more all of these things. So orchestra works really well for me. I love having piano in anything that I write, whether it's chamber music or orchestra, because really it's an orchestra on its own, and it has that percussive power that really gives a nice energy to whatever else is going on. I also love cello. Beautiful instrument.
Wow, so you've rattled off a bunch of instruments there, so it could be even more.
Yeah. And as a guitarist myself, particularly the cello really fits. I've recently also written for 8-string electric guitar, which is a stalwart of the contemporary metal community.
Wow.
But hasn't really made it outside of that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to mention I'm in the studio with Harry Stafylakis. He's the new composer in residence with the Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra. It's been announced, but he won't be officially taking his position here until September when the new year kicks off with the WSO. So give me your first impressions of Winnipeg and the new music festival.
I got here last night. I heard the concert, which was really cool. David Lang, I'm a big fan of David Lang's music. My piece, Brittle Fracture, was performed at the Florida State University Festival of New Music last year, and he was the guest composer, or the featured composer of that festival. So I got to hear several of his pieces then as well. And, of course, being in New York, I get to hear it quite a bit. But yeah, all of the music last night was interesting, really cool performances. So far, off to a good start, for sure.
Now, you've mentioned that, or I mentioned that a lot of your pieces have been played with different orchestras around the world. Right. I'm going to play some music now. You want to tell us about the piece we're going to play now? The one you just mentioned, Brittle Fracture?
Yeah, Brittle Fracture. So this is a piece, it was written for the CUNY the CUNY Contemporary Music Ensemble, which is part of the City University of New York, as a piece for chamber orchestra. That was in 2013, and then I orchestrated it for large orchestra, and it was selected by the American Composers Orchestra for the Underwood New Music readings that they do every year, where they present a few pieces by young composers, emerging composers. And it just so happened that year they were presenting it at the New York Philharmonic Biennial, the new festival that the New York Phil was putting on. And since then, that piece has gone on to be played by several orchestras and was just played this past weekend by the Victoria Symphony, which is where I came from most recently. This piece, it was kind of a bit of a departure for me. I had a tendency to write a lot of music, a lot of ideas, a lot of techniques, a lot of, everything I could put into a piece, I would. And with this piece, I really wanted to focus on a single idea and develop that over however long it needed.
And what is the idea?
The idea is a delay unit. Like a guitar delay.
Like a guitar delay unit.
Applied to an orchestra. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, let's have a listen to some of that music. This is from his work called Brittle Fracture.